theyeshiva.net.
A gute Woche, teure Brüder und Schwester, Chassidim waren Shemaise, B'rishus der Rosh Yeshiva, Chave Moyetzes G'doyle HaTorah of Agudas Yisrael, Yoshev Rosh, Vader Rabbanim of Torah Masorah, Hagon, Reb Hillel David Shlita, B'rishus the Satmar Rosh Yeshiva, Reb Yosef Chaim Shlita, B'rishus the Menal Ruchni von Bobiv, unser Teire Reb Shulam Kessler Shlita, B'rishus alle Geoinim, Rosh Yeshivas, Rabbonim, healers, therapists, psychotherapists, psychologists, V'achirin, all of the heroes of Klal Yisrael, special mothers and fathers who have gathered here from all over North America for this special Shabbos. My dearest friends from Lakewood, New Jersey, such a beautiful representation from Lakewood. Meine Landsleit from Muncie, Butter Park, Williamsburg, Crown Heights, Kiryas Yoel. Yeah, let's hear it for Kiryas Yoel. The new center of love and nurture. Ich lach nicht, was lachst du? And of course, our holiest brothers and sisters from Artzeinu Akdoisha from Eretz Yisrael, even from Kiryas Sefer. A Peladike, a strange Ramban. The Ramban, of course, one of the greatest Rishonim who lived in the 13th century in Spain, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman, who was not only from the Goine Yador and Poiske Yador and Manhige Yador, but was one of the greatest physicians, debaters, leaders, healers of his day. And of course, one of the greatest Parshonim on Chumash, in addition to Shas. And the Ramban, on the Pasuk, Vayehav Yitzchak es Esav ki tzayid befiv. Yitzchak loved Esav. Why? Because tzayid befiv. There was game in his mouth. Hunted animals, food in Yitzchak's mouth. That's why he loved Esav. Says the Ramban, he says, what does this mean? How is this a reason to love Esav? What does it mean, Kitzayid Befiv? And we know all the Mefarshim struggle with this pasuk, beginning with Targum Onkelos and Rashi, etc. So the Ramban, and I quote, the reason he loved Esav, this is the Ramban, Ba'avur ki befiv shel Yitzchak tzayid tamid. In Yitzchak's mouth there was always food. Kol hayoim yis'ave lechol es hatzayid. All day Yitzchak craved to eat the barbecue delicacies, the dishes, the game, the hunted beef that Esav delivered. V'tamid tzayid befiv lo yoichal davar acher. Yitzchak refuses to eat anything else, only what Esav brought from the field. Yis'ave lechol kol hayoim. This is how he explains the pasuk. Now I ask you, if somebody would get up here and want to describe the greatest Rosh Yeshiva of this generation, or the greatest Rebbe of this generation, or previous generation, say, let me tell you about him. He loves to eat all day. That's what my shviga says about me. You know what that means? Call up for shidduch resume. What's with this bacher? He loves to eat all day, but not stam. He doesn't eat anybody's food. He goes to the hunters, and he has this is kol hayoim, nothing else. It's not when he's hungry. A ganze Tag, a ganze Nacht. Almost sounds like a Jewish Shabbatton. Present company excluded. That's why you have a tea room. I was once Pesach somewhere. So I knew the last day of Pesach, Matzai Pesach, when the pizza comes out, there is a rush. And it's pikuach nefesh mamash. To get in the way between a Jew and pasta Matzai Pesach. You guys know, yeah? Macht sich nicht wissen, that it's fine. So I told the maitre d', they was not Jewish. I said, tonight it's going to be crazy here. So he says, but why? They didn't stop eating for 8 days. The tea room is open 24 hours. You can't miss breakfast, lunch, dinner, 24 hours. I said, you don't understand that this is leaven. It's pasta, it's pizza. But over there they had pasta and pizza whole Pesach. So he couldn't understand. So I had to explain it to him. So I said it has to do with Jewish trauma. I say, when we see food, in our imagination, we always think this is going to be the Last Supper. And therefore, we take no chances ever. This is what 2,000 years of deprivation does. The Kachave was even more than I described. So we all understand this. We have names for this. Azoilel, Asoive, Abaltaive, Agrabeyung. Depends where you come from. Williamsburg is one expression. Muncie is a different expression. Lakewood is another expression. That's the complimentary way of saying it. There are other oisius you could find out. I come back to the Ramban. This is how he describes Yitzchak. Go to your nutritionist or go to any therapist and tell him, I want to eat all day. And what are they all going to tell you? You don't want to eat, you're stressed. You put on 100 pounds because you're always eating, because that's how you deal with the pain. Instead of dealing with the pain, you should go for therapy. I mean, not instead of dealing with him. Instead of eating, you should deal with your anxiety, and then you'll stop eating. This is 101. Stress eating. That's why I'm not such a cotton. What does this Ramban mean? Tayere Yidden, open your hearts to what the Ramban is saying. He had a son, Esav. Yaakov came home from yeshiva. Yaakov ishtam Yoshev Halim. Yitzchak bonded with Yaakov how? But durch gelernt HaRashba zusammen. A Ramban. A Ritvo. A Rebbe Akiva Eger. A Ktzos. A Nesivis. A Shev Shmeitzer. A Chidush Rabbeinu Chaim Alevi al Rambam. A Reb Shmuel. A Reb Nochem. Esav is Ish Soda. He's out in the field. He's hunting animals. He came home. Yitzchak wanted, he yearned, he craved to bond. Vayev Yitzchak as Esav, to bond with his son. How? Yitzchak is a avos heinen amerkava shtikelakus. Esav is Yedei Tzayid Ish Soda. Where in the world are they going to connect? It's just Kitzayid Befiv. Says the Rambam, what's this? Yitzchak told Esav, I won't eat anybody else's food. Kol hayoim. All the day, all day, he's looking to bond with Esav, to connect with Esav emotionally, physically, socially, psychologically, spiritually. Esav should feel that he has a father who cherishes him, loves him, appreciates him for what he is doing, and will not let go of that relationship. Gemara says in Soite Daf Yud, David had a son who wanted to kill him. His name was Avshalom. Beautiful kid with the most delicious long hair. And yet he was killed in the rebellion against his father. And when David hears the news, the Tanakh describes, he cries out and he says the word Beni 8 times. Beni, Beni, Avshalom, Beni, mein Zunale, my son. I wish I would have died instead of you, my son. Ask the Gemara, why is he says my son 8 times? Says 7 times Beni took him out of the 7 levels of Gehenna. The 8th one is 2 shittas. The second one, La'al Madasi, brought him into Olam Haba. I ask you, how by screaming the word Bni 8 times, do you take him out of a Gehenna and put him into Olam Haba? Maybe we should just all get up and scream Bni 8 times in Amachaya. Baruch Shepatrani. What's the Gemara saying in Sait? Isn't this what the Ramban is saying? David HaMelech got up and he said, Bni, my son, my son, my son, my son, my zun. You know when the mother and the father, the mother when she lights Shabbos candles or any time of the week, or the father any time of the day or the night, and you're just telling yourself, my son, Bni, my daughter, my son, my son, my son. V'nafshoi kshura b'nafshoi. This is my child and I will not let you go. This is the greatest and deepest recipe to sublimate her or him from the Shiva Meduri Gehenna, not in Olam Haba only. I'm talking about from the Gehenna in Olam Haza. Bini, 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 Bini. But go one step deeper. I opened up the Sefer Mea Shiloyach from the Helik Ishbitzer. Chelik Sheni. It says, Vayeav Yitzchak es Esav ki tzayid b'fiv. I quote, he says tzayid b'fiv means something else. It actually comes from Kisvei Harizal. Yitzchak knew that in Esav's mouth, in Esav's neshama, in his mind, in his mouth, there are many, many great neshamas. Milanu Gadol from Reb Meir, the Gemara in Erev in Daf Yud Gimel. Some of you learned it. I don't know if you still remember Daf Yud Gimel. But not long ago, Lo Yordu Chachamim Lamad Al Soif Daitu Reb Meir. Meir Eini Chachamim Ba'alocha. He's the greatest of the great. He came from Esav. Shmaya, Aftalion, Unkelus. We have a Chiyuv Maivis Sedra every week to learn. Unkelus comes from Esav. And all the Gedim of Klal Yisrael, the greatest great Gedim, that the Rambam writes, the Messiah is to Hashem himself, not Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Says the Mea Shiloyach, Vayeav Yitzchak es Esav. Yitzchak loved Esav. He found the positivity, the beauty in Esav, and you know what he accomplished? He says this is not 2020. This is the late 1800s. He says, by seeing the positivity in Esav, every time he looked at Esav and he felt the love, what happened? From that he created Nishmas HaGedim. It was up to Yitzchak. Yitzchak could have looked at Esav and said, my filthy, dirty, hopeless, lost, sick child. And he had good reason for it. Says the Ishbitzer, because Yitzchak chose to believe and to see and to accentuate the positivity in Esav, Hatabashafen gave him from them. From this came all the Kedusha from Esav. And then it goes one step deeper. And this is a Torah from the Avodas Halevi, Reb Aaron Halevi, Mr. Ashela, one of the greatest Talmidim of the Balatanya in the Sefer Avodas Halevi. Why were the others infatuated with digging wells? Avraham and then Yitzchak. The only story we know about Yitzchak independently is a well with noch a well, with another well, with another well, with another well. 7 wells. Choife be'edis. Even if they dug wells, this is the main feature of Yitzchak's life. He says there's 2 sources of water. There's a source of water that comes from heaven. There's rainwater. There's water that is revealed. The oceans, the seas, the rivers, the lakes, the canals, one source of water. But then there's Leroika Haaretz Al Hamayim, the Be'er Mayim Chayim, the Mayonois that are under the earth. When you look at the earth, you don't see this water. Mit auf Graben und der Grunte von sich. Der Grunte von sich, you have to dig and excavate and discover the Mayim Chaim. But everybody knows which is the freshest water, which is the most sparkling, clean, geschmack, cold water that quenches your thirst, which is the Mayim Chaim that you have to use for Para Aduma. And for the other tumas, you can't just use regular mikveh, make shamim, etc. It's the water from under the earth, the springs that are flowing under the earth. What was Yitzchak's avodah? Yitzchak's avodah was, he saw earth. You look at a person and all you see sometimes is dirt and filth and gravel and debris and pebbles and psoilus. But Avraham and Yitzchak said, don't get deceived by the chitzoniyos. Take a shovel and dig deeper and deeper, and you will find the Be'er Mayim Chayim. Doesn't the Gemara say, Chagiga bar Reb Meir, Toichoy Ochal, Ukli Posoi, Zorak. That's how we could learn from Acher. He ate the Pnimiyas, the Toich, and he cast away the klippe, Frek the Helike Magid. What do you do first? You eat the banana and then you discard the peel, or you first peel the banana and then eat the banana? Tell me, how do you guys do it? What's the minig in Butter Park? You first eat the toich, or you first peel the klippe? What do you do with an orange? So if you're very hungry, you don't have to answer. But if there was an amala mensch, first you remove the klippe and then you eat the toich, yeah? Gedarf stehen, kliposoi zorag v'toicha yochal. Zog the Magid, toicha yochal kliposoi zorag, not now. Reb Meir toicha yochal cause kliposoi zorag. He was a Jew, didn't look at klippe. Mizman, a long time ago, he got rid of the shell of life. He wasn't busy with social conformity. He wasn't busy with impressing the shatchanim. He wasn't busy with making things look good on the outside. Reb Meir, the Medrash says, but Teirasu Reb Meir, it didn't say kostnus or with an ayin. It said kostnus or with an aleph. Fregen da achroinim. It's apostle of Sefer Torah. Reb Meir made a new halacha. Chas v'shalom. Zog the Magid, no, of course it said kostnus or with an ayin. Et nish gesehen da ayin, et gesehen da aleph. Most people look at oil, they see the skin, they see skin. Toicha yachal, because already in his beginning, kliposai zarak. He looked at the core, he saw the pnimiyas. He came from Esav. Vayev Yitzchak as Esav kitzayet befiv. Yitzchak dug and dug and dug. Goes a step deeper. What's the Havana? There's two types of love, Zog the Strasheller. What you heard from the Balatanya. There's two types of love. I'll describe them both. Raise your hand. Which one applies to you? One type of love, he says, is, I love you because you do something for me. I get something from you. Nachas, geschmack, you're a great guy, great person, whatever it is. He says, this type of love, when you separate the two people, what happens? The love weakens, it declines. And if we remain separated for a few years, you forget about it. Next, you move on in life. We all had relationships, right? You may be in the same class with somebody. I always feel funny. I'm on a plane, pre-corona, and we're sitting near somebody, 21-hour flight to Sydney. And 21 hours, you sit as a kavel bebeis ha'asudim. Mechanish gain. You become friends with the person, and then you leave the plane. It's always an interesting feeling. That's all if the love is dependent on something. We were on a plane for 21 hours, yeah? We can either both be awkward or you start talking about, as long as you don't disagree about Trump and Biden, is good. What happens if it's an ava atzmis? What if a mother is separated from her child? So after a year, you tell a mother, okay, it's been a year, it's time to move on. With each year, the tzimoyin, the thirst, grows deeper. Why? Because it's who I am. It's an ava atzmis. This is my atzmis. V'nafshi kshura b'nafshi. I don't love you because something you're giving me. I am one with you. We're not two separate things. The Rakachava has a lashon. Etzem haben hu etzem ha'av. And that's how he explains a sugi in Baba Basra, that Yerusha is not called Shinu Rishus. Yerusha is not called Shinu Rishus. Why? He said, as is lashon itself in his paneach, achsidish lashon. The ben hu etzem ha'av. It's not two separate things. Look separate. It's not separate. So it's like a piece of me is separated. So the more the separation, the more the closeness. Says Rabban Halevi. This is the whole Yididus on Neshama. A Neshama is a chelik elikam imal mamash. Neshama is as atzmius. It's one with Hashem. He says, when the malachim came down to the earth, what happened? Hanefilim hayu baretz. They lost it. They lost it. You know why? He says, because malachim is nicht etzem elikus. So they're separated. They're like, okay, we get a new life. They come to earth, they lose it. Aber Neshamas Yisrael is a chelik elikam imal mamash, as his Rebbe writes. B'meila, when they get separated, when they're sent to earth, what happens? Tzam alecha nafshi, kam alecha b'sari, be'eretz tzia v'oyev b'li mayim, b'mokim shebali tshuva oim dem ein tzadikim gemurim brachas lamadalad and paskin Rambam tshuva perek zayin. Why? Because when we're one, the separation doesn't weaken the ava. It makes it much more authentic, much more real. It shows me that I'm inseparable from you. I tried everything, and I keep on coming back. Why do I keep on coming back? Because we're one, we're inseparable. Neshamas Yisrael are the elikus under the earth. Under the earth. Yitzchak says, dig the well, there's water. There's water, don't look at the offer. And that water is the deepest water, the freshest water, the most beautiful water. Mayim chayim, the water that's metired everything. In other words, every neshama is a kid in pain. Every neshama has been through the trauma of the very reality of existence, of going through such a hishtalshalus von atzmus ein soif baruch hu, to be buried under the earth, the stress of life, the anxiety of life, enclosed in a world that seems so confusing and traumatic on every level. But because we're one and it's inseparable, so the separation only demonstrates that there's a deeper connection, a more powerful connection, a greater thirst, a more powerful achdus. Yitzchak never stopped digging wells. Vayehav Yitzchak es Esav, kitzayid befiv. People say, why? So the Ramban tells us, like the Me'ashel by the Salevi, because that's what a tati does. That's what a father does. And yet, it's a beautiful poem from Reb Shloime ibn Gebirel. Shloime ibn Gebirel says, I run away from you towards you. I run from you towards you. It's going to be a journey, but I run from you because it's inseparable. There's a question, how do you look at a child when you're toifes dis nekuda, yisoidus hayadus, etzem pnimius, the core of Torah? It's not a shaila. Yitzchak had pain from Esav's choices. People think Yitzchak Chalila was naive. They now read the Chumash. Vatiyena moiras ruach leYitzchak u'lerivka. Your son chose an oived avodah zara. They're smoking ktoides, and I don't mean the ktoides of the Beis Hamikdash, and not even the ktoides that my friend Rabbi Yom Tov Chaim Glazer spoke about. I'm talking about the ktoides of avodah zara. So Yitzchak, and then Esav came and said, by the way, how do you give ma'aser from salt? Yitzchak said, wow, Rabban shel kol b'nei hagoyla. Azazun, how do you give ma'aser from salt? Lady says, Ein Shem Shemayim Shaga Befiv. I thought Esav fooled him. Esav hat him nicht abgenagt. Yitzchak understood Esav, but he understood Esav even better than other people. He can have pain, Vatiyena Moedas Ruach, but he did not remove the shovel. He did not stop digging, because he understood Achelek Elikam Imal can't be separated. And if you believe in it, they can believe it. If you can believe in them, they can believe in themselves. And yet people struggle. We all struggle so powerfully with this. And I want to ask you a question tonight. There's only one Yom Tif and all the Yomim Tovim. The Chazal had to make a Yom Tif, and they decided, you know what? For this Yom Tif, we got to make sure that people stop using their brains. The Rebbeinu Shalom made Yomim Tovim, a Pesach, mit a Shvuos, mit a Sukkos, mit a Rosh Hashanah, mit a Yom Kippur. Chazal made Yomim Tovim, a Chanukah. Later generations, one Yom Tov they decided, HaRav, Megillah Daf Zayin. Chayiv inish lebesume bepurya, adelo yoda. People once a year, you heard guys, once a year. Lebesume bepurya, you have to be intoxicated on Purim. Adelo yoda, until you don't know what hit you. Excuse me. So one thing we know, Mordechai was an ayeker. We also know other things about Mordechai. What type of takana is this? Takana, not to use your mind. Am chachem v'noven. As one Jewish leader once said, Am chachem v'noven, if am chachem v'noven, nor gahat a bissel seichel. What type of takana? Celebrate Purim. Pesach is not a Yom Tiv. Sukkot is not man simcha seinu. No, it doesn't say in Torah adelo yoda. Purim, he decided adelo yoda. Nobody should be using their conscious brains. Rabbi say, why? What? Was tut sich da? This is a shayla gdoila. You understand that it's a shayla gdoila. If you try to look at the oimek haTorah, this is a big question. One of the most moving answers I heard for this. There's different answers. Fasemes, there's a big arichis on it. Pachad Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner Zatzal, a big shmuas on this. Already from earlier generations. Sifrei Machshava, Sifrei Chassidus, Sifrei Kabbalah, Sifrei Musa. But once on Purim, I heard a very moving insight from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, because that is the essence of what happened on Purim. Esther didn't want to go into Tachashvedish. She said, Mordechai, with all due respect, I'm married to a Meshugana. He has been diagnosed by all the therapists here. Atzedreiter, idiot, trauma, plus insecure, spineless. And he's not a king. So you understand the churban. And I'm his wife. You go in without permission and he's a bad mood, you come out with a head shorter. You don't know my husband. Das ist kein normaler Mensch. This is achas dos elohamas. So Mordechai, you want me to go into him and ask him to save the Jews. You know what's going to happen? You're going to be making my levaya tomorrow. So the Jews will die and I will die. This is not a bad argument. Right? People call this guy for shalom bayis. I'm like, call the police first if they accompany me to the house, maybe. Not a bad answer. And the Gemara says, Melech Tippish, so Seichel nach euch nicht. Hafchafechan, spine, paranoid. All the milas. What does Mordechai say? So I want to hear his convincing answer. So I would think convincing answer should be the punchline. He should say whatever he says. Punchline should be, Esther, this is the moment you're going to save Klal Yisrael. You're going to become a legend forever. Mordechai says, by the way, Esther, the first thing is, we don't need you. You're going to lose the opportunity. Now, punchline. Says the Even Ezra, who knows? Maybe this is the reason you became the Malka. Maybe. Stellt sich the Shaila, Mordechai. That's how you're going to convince her. You have to say, I'm a Novi, I'm Rosh Sanhedrin, Esther, Ani Yoideya. I know that Le'ez Kazoi Sigat Lamalchus. Hashgocha, I know this is why you're in the palace. I know you're in the palace to cancel, to destroy the Iran deal. And not just a deal, an edict. He says, Mi Yoideya Verves. And if somebody would tell that to me, I would say, well, if you're not sure, I'm certainly not sure. I'm not going to die because, it's good for a shear. Mi Yoideya. Maybe this is Pshat in Rashi. Und efshe nicht. A guy once told his Rebbe he wants to go to university. He says, why? Become an architect. What do you have to be, an architect? He says, every year I build a sukkah and the wind comes and gets destroyed. I want to learn architecture. So for this you have to go to university. You learn Masechta Sukkah, the first Perek, Be'iyun. And you learn everything about architecture. You even know algebra and trigonometry, ribuas, mit eagles, mit alachsons. You'll daf ches, daf tes, you'll figure it out. Okay, he learns Gemara Sukkah a whole year. He builds a beautiful, beautiful sukkah. Erev Sukkos, 20 minutes before Lichtzinden, there's a storm, and the whole sukkah goes flying. Comes running to the Rav. Rebbe. Chabakasha. Says, what happened? So I learned the Gemara Sukkah mit Rashi Be'iyun. I knew every Rashi Baal Peh, and I built a sukkah, and this happened. It flew away. He says, yeah, Tosfos asks that. Mi yoideya. God tzarechiyun. For Rebbe Akiva Eiger. Tzarechiyun gadol v'Hashem yoireinai. I have to go to the king. No, Mordechai was saying one of the deepest statements to this Esther. Esther was teifasit. Esther had a question. Very deep question. It's a question I think every person in this room, in the Ezras Anashim and in the Ezras Noshim, have. I don't know if it's perpetual or consistent, but it's a question. You'll all understand the question very, very fast. Esther said, Mordechai, I know about Hashgacha. I grew up in the system. I got it. I have a question. You know who I am, Esther, right? Hadassah. The Gemara Megillah describes. I was valedictorian of Beis Yaakov, by Sruchel, by Sarah, Bnois Tzion, by Rivka, Nevei Shalamet Bruria, Mikol HaChugim, Esther. The Gemara says every Ummah looked at Esther and said, this is our Meidala. This is it. Esther was Esther. How in the world did I end up in this spiritual dungeon? Me'eh ve'esrim b'sheva medina. This is what I wanted. Married to a guy, to the point that the Sugya in Sanhedrin wonders why she didn't die instead of going to Achashverosh. Gilui Arayis, with two answers in the Gemara. Abayim et HaRav, Sanhedrin Ayin Dalet. Esther said, Wie komm ich dorten? A beautiful Jewish girl. Nach HaYisoyma, under the tutelage of Mordechai, Rosh Sanhedrin Novi. How in the world does Esther end up in Be'er Shachas, in a spiritual abyss? That's what bothers her. This is my destiny in life. This was never my trajectory. I was told my whole life that our job is to defeat Hitler. What do they say at every Sheva Brachas? Aufstellen, ehrliche Yiddische Deures. What's the bracha they give by Sheva Brachas? Aufstellen, ehrliche Yiddische Deures. Now will ich aufstellen a Daryovish. And he's not learning in Torah V'Yira. He's not even learning, he's not learning in any yeshiva, nicht in Slabodka, nicht in Chevron, nicht in Ponovich, nicht in Mir, nicht in Brisk. I feel nicht in Taim Chitmimim. Good question. You know what Mordechai tells her? Mordechai tells her two words. Mi yoideya im le'es kazoi sigat l'malchus. My Tayira Esther. Some things in life you will never be able to process through das. Some things are l'mayla min hadas. If you use your rational brain and you say, I did everything right. I gave tzedakah every day. I learned a blad gemara every day. I'm not from the fathers who beat their children ad tzeis hanefesh. I'm not from the fathers. Remember in Yeshiva, there's a malama, they smacked us up before we would give the smack. They gave us a patch, was kennen sagen kiddush levana af de levana. Or the classroom, somebody knows exactly, it happened to him. The classroom, he said, this is the goylem table. All the goylems. Or the teacher who told us once, I'm greater than the Maharal. Maharal had one goylem, ich hab 19. And then he added, the Maharal's goylem didn't speak. My 19 do speak. You weren't that father, you weren't that mother. You went on beautiful chalamoyah trips with bananas and oranges and hard-boiled eggs. You went to the circus, Olav Hashalom. You remember the Fahak, the circus? You went on family vacations. There's a nice atmosphere in the house. You're good people. You're not traumatized from Hitler, Yamach Shemoy. At least not consciously. We're all traumatized, at least not consciously. You did it right. You were looking for an Esther Amalke. It was a nice house, taka nice house. You know, you hear people get up to give speeches. You know the speeches. If you're, they tell you that the list of 7 things you do and the 7 things you shouldn't do, and then it's going to be beautiful. And then you look at yourself, and you say, so I must be a Rosh Merusha. I must be this horrible mother or father, the worst of the worst. Look what we did. Esther says, what aveira did I do, or my mother did, or my father did, that I'm married not only to a goy, intermarried, but to Achashverosh. The Gemara sagt, Soine Yisrael Yosef Haman. He was a bigger anti-Semite than Haman, at least according to one shit. You know what Mordechai told her? Mordechai said, Mi yodeya im la'es kazoi segat lamalchus esteke. There are elements of Hashem that we can understand, we can appreciate. You look at your digestive system. Rabbi Yerucham did once a whole shmuz, the mashgiach of the Mir. He said if you would analyze the digestive system, you take a piece of fish or a drop of seltzer, you put it into your mouth, what happens from that moment until it gets digested? You would start dancing from the miracle. You study the urinary system, the digestive system, the circulatory system, the respiratory system. It's mind-staggering. And the other systems, all the 9 systems. Study one atom, one cell. Look at what your white blood cells do all day. What your red blood cells. Hafla v'fella. There's so much of life we look at and we marvel, and that's why there's Birchas HaShachar and Birchas Haidah and Masechta Brachas, Rambam Hilchas Brachas, Shulchan Aruch Hilchas Brachas. But Mordechai says there are elements of the Ribono Shel Olam that are mi yodeya. Who knows? Ashreinu ma toiv chelkeinu, uma noyim goyraleinu, uma yofa yerushaseinu. What are those 3 things? Ashreinu ma toiv chelkeinu, your chelik is that which belongs to you based on your kishroinus and your personality. You know, people who go to life coaches to tell them what type of parnasa to choose. So there's the minig by Chassidim, you go to real estate. Buy a few buildings in Manhattan, and the coaches can analyze other people in San Francisco, which chelik to do. Who am I? You go to your therapist, you go to your guru, you go to your mashpia, your mechanech. Explain to me who I am. I'm this, I'm this. It could take 50 years to begin to figure out who you're not. Basically, someone said, why at 50 do you start giving advice? Most people I know give advice at 15. Today the kids give advice at 6. He said, at the age of 50, you made so many mistakes, you realize that you could be quiet. The Veishiv was nicht zu sagen. Sometimes the best eitzah, by the way, you could give somebody. It's called ich weiß nicht. Rosh Yeshiva in Lakewood, the Pshnei Kotler's son-in-law, told me once. He said, he heard it from my Ger Chassid B'Shem, one of the Ger Rebbes. He says, Eidus bihoisev samay b'tzeisi al eretz Mitzrayim, Sfas lo yadati eshma. You know why Paroi was so impressed with Yosef? He was the first man who told Paroi, Bil Odoi, chveis nicht. Sfas lo, somebody says lo yadati. I was invited to a kumzitz. It was in Muncie. I live in Forshey area. I was invited to Pomona. It's a yeshiva for children who are struggling. 40 boys. They had a fire pit. They were roasting marshmallows, kimineg hanagidim hamafarsamim, with some hot dogs, some sauerkraut. Kimineg anshish lamaini. The guitars, the drums. The only one who was missing was Reb Motta, but everything else was there. The Botta yesterday started 2 a.m. You know that? And after that, there were questions and answers. But this was much earlier. I'm sitting. I'm telling stories, avart. It was really a beautiful atmosphere. The boys were into it. We're singing a song. I still remember the song. A boy sits down right near me. He puts his hand on my shoulder. So, like in camp. So I put my hand on his shoulder. He says, Rabbi, why? Why did my mother die? I didn't expect that. I said, I'm so sorry. When did she die? 10 years ago. She had 11 children. She was a young lady, early 40s. She got cancer. She passed away. He was 11 years old. I was so close with my mother. Why did she die? He's now 10 years later. He's 21. I looked at him and I said 3 words. I don't know. But I would like to be here for you if I can. He starts crying. I'm also crying. He says, 10 years I'm waiting for somebody to tell me those 3 words. I said, what do you mean? He says, I went to so many people. Everyone starts giving me explanations. Gilgulim, Tikkunim, Avedas, Olam Habas, Mises, pre-Mashiach, almost Mashiach, Hekitzu Verananu, before Tchias HaMesim, Gilgulim, Holocaust, Mises, Galicia, Hungary, Poland, Russia, Gan Eden Elyon, Gan Eden Atachten, families, Yisurim, and 11-year-old kid. I said, listen, I'm not judging anybody, but I don't know. I don't think anybody knows, and I'm so sorry. And he sat there crying. A few months later, he sends me an email that conversation allowed him to let go of so much anger that he had to rabbis, to leaders, that couldn't simply validate his pain. Sfas lo yadati eshma. Mordechai tells Esther, Ashreinu matov chelkeinu, this chelkeinu. I know what I'm good at. You know what you're good at. Everyone has their unique shlichus, their kishroinus in the world. So da Rebbe Akiva Eiger und so da Pesche de Balagola. Und alle seine Kinder von Eberstein. But he has their chelik. Ma Yofa Yerusha Seinu. This is a good one. Intergenerational trauma. Or better, the genes. I don't just have my own. I have my mommy's genes and my tati's genes and the Zaydas and the Bubbas. Today with epigenetics, we know that the Jews of Maimed Har Sinai are still alive now in our genes. Ma Yofa Yerusha Seinu. It's beautiful Yerusha. But there's something else. Ma Noyim Goyraleinu. What's a goydel? What's a goydel? Why was I zoiche begoydel? We make a goydel. I won the goydel. Why? Mi yodeya. Doesn't mean it was a mistake. Shuvas hagoynim, it says, ha'oivid ala goydel, koivid ala seres hadibris. Wasn't a mistake. Mi yodeya. Some components of Hashem's behavior in this world and your mission cannot be encapsulated rationally, intellectually. Esther, this is a moment of miya ideya. It's somewhere engraved in etzem hanefesh mamish. This is your shlichus, for which your neshama came down to the world, waiting thousands of years to go into Achashverosh and Shafen Purim, and I can't explain why you. But I can tell you it's your essence, manoyim goyrol leinu, it's your goyrol. This is not the idea. When Esther heard this, she understood the only way to be toifus, miyoideya, is when you go beyond das. She went in, and history was changed. We're here tonight. So when they had to be mesaken hayom tif of Purim, what did they say? Chayav inish ad lo yoda. The miyoideya Purim al shem hapur hu agoyrul manoyim goyrolenu ad lo yoda. And if you don't believe me, the Tikkunei Zohar says that Purim is like Yom Kippur, Kippurim, Yom Kippurim. What does the Mishnah say in Yom Perek Vav? Shnei Su'ire Yom Kippurim. There were two goats. Mitzvason sheyiyu shavin, b'mare, b'koime, b'domim. Two goats, identical in look, in height, in price. One goat ended up where? In Kodesh HaKadoshim. Another goat ended up where? Azazel. You look at a family, two brothers, two sisters. You look at the brothers. One brother ended up in Kodesh HaKadoshim. Another brother is experimenting with Azazel. So people like to say, probably this brother, the father was still an alcoholic. The mother was still codependent. The other brother, they already went to Reb Shimon Russell. They worked out the matziv. So the Mishnah says, wait. Shnei Sirei Yom Kippurim, Shavin, B'mare, B'koime, B'domim. Parents spent the same money on therapists for both kids. B'koime, they gave them the same stolzkeit. B'mare, they gave them both the same gaze, the save upon them yofas. One in Kodesh HaKadoshim and one is experimenting with Azazel. Why? It was a goyrel. Yom Kippur was a goyrel. Manoyim goyreleinu. It's l'mayla min adas, miyoideya verves. Who knows the destiny, the journey of a neshama? It's far beyond anybody's rational explanation. The question, and here is the greatest challenge. When you look at such a soul, the only way you can handle it is if you go into a place of ad lo yada. If you go to a place of yada, if you're trying to figure it out, you're trying to be yoitze for the shver, the shviga, the zayda, the baba, the feta, the mimah. He came to the chasana and he looked. How do you bring him to shul, the chabusha for the kehillah? Your whole mishpach is going to get ruined. We're hiding our imperfections already since the Milchama. Actually, we started in the 1700s. We have a wall-to-wall carpet so we could put everything under the carpet. Everything. And you have the chutzpah. We are the perfect family, don't you know? We are the quintessential. We're the family that when you look at us, you're jealous. And you, beroiv tipshuscha, v'chutzpascha, instead of throwing the kid out, lo'olam va'ed, I'm soon going to have to speak adalayada. Instead of throwing out the kid lo'olam va'ed and telling him, ein lecha chelik v'nachla b'lekei Yisrael, you have the chutzpah to love him and enjoy him and verbring with him and believe in him and walk with them and celebrate life with them and see the water under the earth and see a chelik elikami ma'al mamish. Where did you get these shtusim? Whose clips are you listening to? Who are you talking to? Maybe you need a medication. I have been on medication for anxiety all these years to cover everything up. Now you need a medication. So you're going to start debating? So you don't debate them, but you debate yourself. You go home And you tell yourself, I may be crazy. It's so embarrassing. And the answer is, mi yodeya. If you tune in to Hashem, Ada lo yada, there's no ego. And when there's no ego, you ask not what God can do for you. You ask what you can do for God. Das ist Ayid. That's where Yiddishkeit begins. All of you know the truth, and you know it more than I, that all of you discovered Yiddishkeit through these children. You know that your relationship to Hashem, was completely transformed. You know that your relationship to yourself was transformed. You know that your vulnerability came out in ways that it never did before, because you had to go into the place that's deeper than the brain, that creates the blockages and tries to figure everything out and turn it into a pilpul, which we're all very good at. We're taught years to turn everything into a pilpul. But sometimes you say, to touch the miyodeya, to be able to say the manoyim geiraleinu, that's a completely different experience. Sometimes you see something and your breath is taken away. So some people, somebody spoke today about the Alps, St. Moritz, Grand Canyon. Mark Twain said when God created the Grand Canyon, he didn't create the adjectives with which to describe it. Some things don't have adjectives. Pain is one of them. Miyodeya is one of them. There's no adjectives. But I'm looking through a sefer called Siach Sarfi Kodesh a few years ago. It's a Torah from the Kotzker, from the Pshischer, from the Vorker, from the school of Vorker, Pshischer, Kotz, Chidush Yarim, Schusam Yagan Aleinu. I open up, I'm looking at Toldos. Rivka tells Yaakov, go, run away. Go to my brother, v'yashafta ima yamim achadim. Stay with him a couple of years. Now listen. Ad asher toshuv chamas ochicha. Clear. Until your brother calms down. Till your brother's anger goes away. Ad asher toshuv chamas ochicha. Until your brother's anger goes away. Clear. Then you'll come back. Rivka continues. Ad asher toshuv chamas achicha, ad shuv af achicha mimcha. Frag the Amshenov over there in Siach Sarfi Kodesh, the first Amshenov Rebbe, says, what's the redundancy? Ad asher toshuv chamas achicha, ad shuv af achicha mimcha. Mama's saying the same thing. Till your brother's anger goes away. Until your brother's anger goes away, but the second time it says, from you. Why doesn't she say Mimcha the first time? You know what he says? And it's two separate Pesukim also, which is even stranger. If you're saying the same thing, at least say it in the same sentence. Listen how he teaches this Pasuk. I'm telling you, some things you see, it's like, whoa. Ad asher toshuv chamas achicha. Until your brother's anger goes away. How are you going to know when your brother's anger goes away? Ad shuv af achicha mimcha. When your anger towards your brother goes away from you. Rivka tells Yaakov, Esav is not only angry at you, you're angry at him. In your soul, you'd never made peace with Esav. The blame is not only Esav. Yaakov, deep down, you never made peace with Esav. You have a lot of issues with your brother. Can you cleanse it? Can you work on yourself and get rid of the anger of your brother that lives in your heart? Mimcha! So I'm thinking, wow, that's big stuff. I open up a Ksav Sefer. Das ist ein Oibelender. Some Sefer's family. Different style than the Siach Sarfi Kodesh. Ksav Soifa says the same touch. Reb Shmuel Birenbaum Zatzal, Rosh Hashiva of Mir, he finished the shir. Bacha came over to him and said, Rebbe, alles was had gesagt, alles was the Rosh Hashiva had gesagt, I found in this sefer. He thought, maybe he'll take him for a shir, whatever. He was very proud of himself. He chapped him. So Reb Shmuel Birenbaum said, as me geht auf a krummen Weg, gefit mir nicht kein andere Cars. If me geht auf a gleiche Weg, sind in the andere Cars like. If you go crooked, you go through the forest, there won't be any other cars. You go on the highway, there'll be other cars. Esav wants to kill Yaakov. But deeper, what does Yaakov have with Esav? Yaakov, are you ready? Are you ready to really accept Esav? And you know what happens in Vayishlach? Yaakov fights a whole night. Vayivoser Yaakov levadoi vayeovek ish imo yadaloi sashacha. Yaakov remains alone, and a man battles him, and I ask a klotz kasha from a 5-year-old child. Levadoi means alone, so there was nobody there. So how can a man wrestle with him if he was levadoi? And there's only one answer. He was wrestling with himself. At some point, he has to ask himself answer this question. It's not an easy question to answer. Can you really, really make peace with yourself? Can you stop hating yourself? Can you stop blaming yourself? Can you release the trauma? Can you release the stories, the narratives that you've been telling yourself since 2 years old? Of how bad you are and all the expectations that are created to compensate for that void and all the pain that comes because you're covering up yourself. Can you accept the fact that you're a true chelik eleka mimal ashtik elikus, that you're beautiful, that you don't need to be angry at Esav? Can you go into Adeloyad Miyoidea, I know, with tears and with pain and with vulnerability and with honesty? Can you strip yourself from all your layers and say, Manoyim Goyraleinu, without expectations, without allowing other people to create the agendas, allowing yourself to be a conduit? V'hoya kinagin hamenagin, v'tehi alav ruach Hashem, says the Magid. What's vayihi kinagin hamenagin? The menagin has to become a nagin. Nagin is the instrument. Can you become the violin through which the Rebbeinu Shalom will vibrate his music through? It's why I wake up in the morning. It's not who I think I am and who I want to be and who I dreamt to be. And this one disappointed me. Rebbeinu Shalom, I am your violin. V'hoya kinagin hamenagin. I transcend my trauma, my insecurities, my fears, and I become a conduit, an ambassador. Shluchoi shalodom kimoisoi kiddushin memalif. And the Rivosh and Shuvas HaRivosh says, Mamish, you are shliach of Hashem, Adam Elyoin, an ambassador of Hashem in this world. Mi yoideya. Fasten your seatbelt and go on the journey with passion and gusto, with simcha and Yerushalayim, with Avos Hashem, Avos HaTorah, and Avos Yisrael, which are really kul echad mamish. V'hoya kinagin hamenagin. Can I let go of my anger? And I ask myself, I ask all of you, are you still angry at your children? I know you'll say no. But I want to ask you again, how angry are you at your child? Are you angry? For good reasons, not for bad reasons. Your child changed your life dramatically. You would have been home this Shabbos. Okay, it's not like you starved here. Baruch Hashem. Some of us gained a few pounds. From session to session, and the ikir from sprinkle cake to 7-layer cake. We always remember priorities at Jewish Shabbatons. We don't allow the tuffle to take over. Tea room is the ikir, the sessions mehechatesa. He's boring. This I heard already. That joke we know, that story we heard. He likes to hear himself. Am I angry? Anger is normal. But when I'm stuck in anger, I'm in a very limited space. Don't judge yourself. Bist a mensch. Rivka said, I know you're angry at Esav. He's no easy brother. And he was the oldest. He's not an easy brother to grow up with. But Yaakov, you're going to have to cleanse that. You're going to have to find yourself. And you know what happens after Yaakov battles a whole night with himself? He finds out that he's limping. He never discovered his true koima, his true stature. The Mos Yaakov. So he tells this guy, Barcheni, give me a bracha. You ever fought in a dark alley with a gangster all night, and in the morning you said, by the way, a bracha? And you know what the man says? I'm not giving you a bracha. You need a name change. Stop calling yourself Yaakov. You're not holding on to the heel of your brother. You're not a heel, and you're not holding on to your brother's heel, trying to catch up in life. My head, not an eikev arosh. Sarisa. You have battled, Vatuchel, you prevailed. You're an ambassador of infinity, an ambassador of love, light, hope, healing, authenticity, wisdom, redemption. That's who you are. And what's the next scene? He meets Esav, and what happens? He's expecting war. There's going to be war. What happens? Esav comes over and says, my brother, give me a hug. Wait. This is not how it's supposed to happen. You're ruining the story. So the gedaft game blood. Somebody once said in our shul, blood wird sich gissen, aber shalom wird sein. I thought there's war. It was in all the newspapers. There's going to be war. Yaakov worked on himself that night. He heard Rivka's words. Ad Asher Toshuv Hamas Ochicha Mimcha. He did it. And everything changes. My dearest friends, my brother, some of you know my brother Reb Simon, gives a weekly class pre-corona in Manhattan for secular Jews. He's doing it since 1982 or 3. He told us to me, I heard it Clay Rishon, the Maisa. A boy came into the class, a boy, 29 years old. He sat down. He came for 6 months. He didn't say a word. After 6 months, he mustered the courage. He sits down near my brother. My brother sees he's physically disabled. His motor skills are compromised. Verbally, he communicates, and it's hard to understand. He tells my brother, I was born with a rare neurological disease. The doctors told my parents, this kid is going to be a nightmare. Don't take him home. Put him in an institution. You won't have day and night. And my family says my parents are wealthy Manhattan Jews, and they're social. They go to events. They're always going out. They never took me home. I never saw my parents. My brother says, where do they live? In Japan? No, they live in Manhattan. And where do you live? In Manhattan. Every month my father sends me a big check. But they never wanted to see me, so there won't be any bonds. What do you do? He says, you see, I can't work much. My father sends me a beautiful check, and I do some little jobs. My brother tells me, he says, I'm looking at this bacharel, a Yiddish bacharel, and I see the light on his face. You could see the light of somebody who's mezuchach, somebody who's refined, an oisgarbete mensch, physically compromised, emotionally mature, beautiful, glowing. So my brother says, I couldn't deal with it. I pick up the phone. I call get the number, I call his father. And I say, hi, my name is Simon Jacobson. And I tell the father, I met your son. And boom, dial tone. Boom. So my brother is idealistic. He thinks the phone got disconnected. He calls back. I don't know if I would, but he calls back. The father says, you didn't get the message? I don't want to talk to you. Boom. Now he's telling the story. You know when people, anybody ever hung up on you? Right? Some go to therapy. Some repress it. Some go to eat. Some go to the kiddush club. Some go to the sponge cake. Some run for mincha ma'adim and they remain for a week in shul. V'chuli v'chuli kol chadafim shura delay. My brother waits a little bit. He calls the mother. Mit der Mama kann man reden. He calls the mother, present company excluded. Da kann man reden mit der Tata euch. She starts crying. My brother tells her, I want to tell you something. Every orphan I ever met asked me if I knew their father. They want to hear something. Kids who are adopted are always searching for their biological parents. It's a need of a human being to know, may ayin basa, you have a living child, you owe him. You owe him. It's a basic chayv in life to show him whose mother and father is. He doesn't even want to go home. But you could see him. Nothing is going to happen. And he's a beautiful soul. She's crying. She says, my husband made a decision 30 years ago. We can't go back. He says, why can't you go back? You're not going to live forever. This is not something you're going to forget. Talk to my husband. My brother's credit, he waited. He called the husband once, twice. Finally, the man said to him, if you come with him, fine. He wanted a buffer. They make an appointment Sunday afternoon. They live in a penthouse above Central Park in Manhattan. My brother picks up this bachel. He's 30 years old. They come into the penthouse. My brother told me I never knew that in Manhattan you can have such a large house. I realized that they're well-to-do. They haben auf HaRav Shabbos. It's beautiful. It's above the park. It's magnificent, something special. There's chocolate on the table, some nuts. We sit down. Nobody gives anybody eye contact. Nobody gives eye contact. Nobody looks at each other. They're not looking at him. And they're talking about the weather. Elevator talk. They finish the weather. They talk about Sunday football. It's before Corona. You finish with football. They go to some other superficial subject. There's nothing happening. So my brother interrupts. He says, listen, it's beautiful to talk about the weather. And I really like the pistachios and the sunflower seeds and the chocolate almonds. Beautiful. But we're here for a reason. I met your son. Beautiful soul. And I thought it would be beneficial for both father, mother, and boy to meet each other. And my brother tells me, he says, why, Yitzchak? This boy opens his mouth. I knew that he memorized these words because it wasn't easy for him to talk. And these are his words. He says, mama, papa. He couldn't say mommy. He couldn't say pap or ta. He didn't have the ability. So he said, mama, papa. Mama, papa. You know that I am not perfect. But mama, papa, over the years I came to learn that you are also not perfect. Mama and papa, I have forgiven you for being imperfect. I hope one day you will be able to forgive me for being imperfect. The mother burst out crying. She went over to her son and hugged him for 5 minutes. The father stood up, took him an extra minute or two, and then he hugged his son for 5 minutes. My brother told me, he said, why at that moment I felt like a shadchan after the chuppah. I didn't get a check, but it was a shadchan after the chuppah. I looked at them. I said, I think I'm going to excuse myself Have a wonderful day. He said, it was already inappropriate for me to be there. It was a moment of intimacy. Nafshi, Kesher, Nafshi. I'm not family, and he left. The family was reunited. My dearest friends, it's a profound question that Rivka challenged Yaakov with, and we must challenge ourselves with. Are you ready to forgive your children for being imperfect? For some of them, being so broken. For some of them, being so sensitive. For some of them, being so spiritual and they could not deal with the hypocrisy. For some of them, being exposed to molestation before puberty, and their entire identity is transformed once they reach puberty. Can you forgive them? For feeling so fragmented, broken, lost, lonely, angry, insecure? Can you forgive your child for having social anxiety and for having internal anxiety? For having learning disabilities or other disabilities? Can you forgive them? And I want to ask you one more question, my dear friends. Can you forgive yourself? Can you forgive yourself for you being imperfect? Yes, I made mistakes. I made big ones. You made mistakes. Can you forgive yourself? Can you forgive yourself and realize that ultimately this was a story of miyodeya? You know it. You know it. In Yeshiva's Torah V'yira, there was a bacher who left Yiddishkeit, and he was a good Bal Kesher. He had potential. And the Rosh Yeshiva was devastated. And he went to the Satmirov, Rabbeinu Yoel, Zechet Tzaddik Levracha. And he said, Rebbe, what did I do wrong? And the Satmirov told him, Ich will de fragen a Shaila. Esav had gehad a gitte tate? Esav had a good father? Shiva said, yeah. A gitte mama? Yeah. Were they abusive? HaRav didn't use that word abusive. But were they, Rishoyim, Achzorim? No. He said, Esav had gehad a gitte Rosh Yeshiva? Yeah, Yitzchak, Avram, not bad. Sie haben gekannt, gewusst, wie es abteitschen am Aram Schiff. Sag mal so, Esav hat gehad a gitte Chavrisse? Yaakov, best Chavrisse in the world. Und was ist geschehen? Something, it didn't go that way. Sadly, Yitzchak invested everything, but Esav, the Gemara says in Kiddushin Yudches Yisrael Momer. HaRav says, wait. Let's go to Avram, his Zayda. Avram had gehad a gitte tate. He says, Terach, a bandit, a noivad avodah zarah, tried to burn his own son alive. A gitte mama, a maslai. The Gemara describes Baba Basra, her matzav during the pregnancy of Avram. It's not for now. Et gata chavrusa? Yeah, Nimrod wanted to be his chavrusa. So he grew up in a dysfunctional home, a goyish home. He says, was gevaren von hem? Echad ha'Avram, the father of Klal Yisrael. And you guys know, you look at a family, your neighbor. You know the guy. The guy is whatever. And you know his wife also. They did everything wrong. And the kids, kafte v'ferach. You did everything right. And 4 kids are struggling, 3 kids are struggling, 2 kids, 1 kid. Every kid is a Olam Malach. Satmar Rebbe said this. It's not my words. Satmar Rebbe says, "Siehst du, der Eberste führt der Welt nicht wie du verstehst und nicht wie ich verstehe." Miyodeya. Esther went into the palace with Achashverosh, but every Jew today is alive because of Esther Hamalka. That kid who was cast into the lion's den, that beautiful girl. Chut shel chesed moshu chalel. Satmar Rebbe says, you don't know. Du weißt nicht. very deep maisa. I know a woman, she shared this with me, this is Clay Rishon. She grew up in California, secular home, not even Pesach. The 60s, Berkeley. She's searching for truth. She becomes a Buddhist for 4 years in a monastery. It's not enough. She's baptized in a monastery in Scotland from the 9th century. She goes to hundreds of monasteries, dozens of monasteries, Albania, Yugoslavia. A Yiddish maidel, a brilliant woman, 4 years. Hinduism, Buddhism. It wasn't enough. Sufism. You know what Sufism is? The Kabbalah of Islam. After 4 years, she's in a Tibet ashram. And she gets a call that her father is deathly ill. And she tells me, to their credit, they weren't a cult. So they said, go home to your father. She goes home. It's before Pesach. Her mother says, when I was a kid, we used to have a Seder. It's a pity I never did it for you, girl, for you. It's a nice tradition. A friend of hers, no texting, then they used to use a telephone call, a telephone by the wall, Olav Shalom. Where you sent a letter with a stamp, Olav Shalom. You spelled out a name, you wrote words, you learned how to write a whole word, a sentence, periods, commas. You was spelled Y-O-U. Gets a real call. I'm going to a Hasidic community in Crown Heights for Seder. Will you come? Yeah. There was a moise that opened then up for girls who want to learn about Yiddishkeit. It was called Mechon Chana. Rav Hillel David Shlyt knows that very well because he learned in that building in Koilo Gorarie of Reb Yitzchak Hutner Zatzal in the 60s on President between Kingston and Brooklyn. That nice building over there, not on the side where the Rebbe lived, on the other side. MS, he told me yesterday. That same building, the Koilo moved away in the late 60s because of the situation. There wasn't so poshut. They bought that ultimately from somebody and it became a moiset. And they're having a Seder for girls who don't have family. This lady tells me, I ended up there. Who comes to visit the Seder before he goes to do his own Seder? The Lubavitcher Rebbe. He wants to visit. And he goes in and he checks out the moiset and he gives a beautiful bracha to all these girls. She said, I was so moved. It was the Rebbe's face, the atmosphere, Pesach, Seder, Yiddishkeit, Nigunim. She's a spiritual person. She started to learn. She decided to stay a whole Pesach. She decided to stay for Shavuos. And she'll go back to Tibet afterwards. She was enthralled. She never knew that in Judaism there's transcendence, spirituality, meditation, oneness, harmony, internal spiritual growth. A lot of Jews also don't know that it's in Judaism, even those who whatever. But she was exposed to this. She tells me, I decided I'm going to introduce myself to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and I'm not going to lie to him. I'm not going to tell him that I came straight from Beis Yaakov, you know. I wrote him a letter, and I wrote to him everything I did. Now, Buddhism is filled with Avodah Zarah practices. Today, they already took out meditation, different stuff, but she did it k'mo shehu, with the fragrance and the incense and the bowing down. And it was real Avodah Zarah from the ancient days. And she was baptized and everything. She told me she wrote a long letter to the Rebbe, and she described everything she did for 4 years. She said the words of Yisroi. You know what Yisroi said? Ata Yadati. Was it Rashi Melamed? Shaloi hiniach avodah zarah shaloi ovda. Now, I asked somebody, you think the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a type of person to write this to? So somebody said, I don't know, but probably he's going to tell you that you're mechayiv misa 74,000 times. Based on the avodah zarahs, yeah? if there was Eidim and Asra v'chuli, it would have been a matziv of 74,000 times chiyuv misa. Okay, now there's no chiyuv misa. There'll probably be 74,000 tikkunim. 74, you'll probably have to fast for the next 89 years, with a few sigufim, which for a good Buddhist, 40 years is nicht the savelt. She didn't grow up in Shabbatons with cheesecake, so it wouldn't be dishgefrach. Told me she sends in the letter, and the Rebbe writes her back a tshuva. Hurt. To understand the tshuva, I have to tell you, remind you the Gemara in Megillah Davav. The Gemara says, if somebody tells you, Yagati v'loy matzasi al tamen, I worked hard, I didn't find, don't believe him. Lo yagati matzasi, I was a couch potato and I discovered all the truth, al tamen. Yagati matzasi tamen. Somebody says, I worked, I steiged away, I toiled, it wasn't easy. Umatzasi, and I discovered. Adam lama tamen, believe. The Rebbe writes to her, he says, since by you was mekuyim the Yagati, is betach, certainly, there was mekuyim, the second half of the Maimon Chazal, umatzasi. Since the Yagati you were mekayim, with the deepest yearning and thirst, so now for sure the umatzasi is an unprecedented, powerful, and fulfilled matzasi. She says, I started to cry and I realized he took 4 years of my getting lost and he turned them into a Yagati. I was searching for Hashem in the wrong places. You were Mekayim or Yagati. Certainly Hashem gave you a matzasi. Gave me my soul. He allowed me to celebrate Yiddishkeit. Got rid of the terrible guilt. Yeah, the Rav told her, to the mikveh, you're baptized, there's different inyanim that you have to do in terms of mikveh. She did that all. But the hashkafas oilam was, you look at people, they're on a journey. Either you say they're lost, or you say their Yagati is very, very intense. And you know how true this is with so many of our children. Their search is so extreme and so profound. It's like you want to say, stop, Atkan. But your kid is like, no, Yagati is Yagati. I know he doesn't quote the Gemara. He lives the Gemara. No. Ich will gefunden dem Ebersten im Esak Shamayim Shamoto va'atzio sho'oli neko gam choshech lo yachshik mimeko. As the Baditchev sagt, Riboyne Shaloilam, Aye em tzeko von Aye lo em tzeko. Nisarech Hazman, I want to bless all of you and bless myself with this blessing. I know a Yid, his name is Reb Zalman, and he saw what I saw. He saw that, and he's a mensch, and he cared. He saw that every day the mailman came to 770 with 600 letters, and he knew that the Rebbe didn't allow his secretaries to open the envelopes. He wanted to open them himself. You ever tried to open 600 envelopes? So he went and he bought a machine. Sony makes a machine. Boom, 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 open. He gives it in. The Lubavitcher Rebbe returns it. He says, "So macht zu viel Rasch." So he calls Sony. You have a silent model. We used to have it, it's out of stock. Name your price, but find it. So for a nice price, they found one. And he got a silent one. He was besimcha. He gave it in. The Rebbe sends it back out. This already wasn't fair. So machshirish kirash. No tumult, it's quiet. So I guess the Rebbe felt compelled to explain. So he sent a message to him. I'll say it in Yiddish, those who will also translate it. He says, Yidden schreiben a brief. They vermachen the convert. They seal the envelope. So dort die, was vermachen the convert, mit devek. There are those who use glue. There are those who use Kesher v'neya, they use their saliva. There are those who use scotch tape, or stapler. Aber es da solche Jiden, was vermachen der Konvert mit seinen Tränen. Wie kann ich öffnen mit einer Maschine, was ein Jid hat vermacht mit den Tränen? There are Jews who seal their envelopes with scotch tape, glue, saliva, but there are those Jews who seal the envelopes with their tears. How can I open with a machine that which a Jew sealed with his or her tears? The machine won't pick up the tears. But when I open it up with my fingers, I can take in, I can detect, I can contain the tears. I bless you and me that we should stop using machines and be able to detect the tears and maybe not dry them, but at least hold on to them. Create space for them. Allow them to go into you. And even though when those tears go into you, they will cause yet a deeper flow of tears. But maybe when our children will feel that our tears and their tears can become enmeshed, we can both be healed together, and the whole world can become one once again. Thank you very much.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.